Prologue. Interplanetary ships manned by inhabitants of other worlds will come from the different planets of the solar system. This class of ship is possessed by any advanced humanity from any of the worlds in space. These ships have not been given to the terrestrial man for fear that he will commit in other worlds the same barbarities he has already committed here in his historical conquests. The inhabitants of any of the worlds of the solar system are already very advanced and know all too well the lamentable state of barbarism in which the inhabitants of Earth find themselves. However, in the new Aquarian era, the inhabitants of the different worlds of the solar system will establish official contact with our planet Earth. Those humanities from Venus, Mars, Mercury, etc., will come in interplanetary ships, and many will be the human beings who will embark on those ships to know the different planets of the solar system. Those advanced humanities will teach those interplanetary ships to man. In this way, official science will be struck down, and human pride will be mortally wounded by the advanced humanities of the solar system. In the new Aquarian era, the Aryan race will have conquered the interplanetary ether, and trips to other worlds of the solar system will become routine. There will be cultural and commercial exchange with the entire solar system, and as a consequence, man will rise to an extremely high cultural level. May peace be with all humanity. Samael Aun Weor, Great Avatar of Aquarius. Chapter 1: The Naked Truth. A very famous newspaper in Mexico City, DF, carries the following news in large headlines on the front page: flying saucers in France and the United States located by radar. Below, we transcribe the text of this alarming news. Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, August 2nd, AFP. The flying saucers reappeared last night in the Midwestern United States. The Oklahoma Highway Police point out that at the Tinkham military base, near Oklahoma City, radar registered the presence of unidentified objects that evolved in the sky at some 7,000 meters of altitude, but at the base itself, they refuse to confirm or deny the news. They hide it. On the other hand, 3 police patrols claim to have seen objects that flew in perfect formation for 30 minutes. The color of these objects, red at first, gradually transformed into white and bluish-green. The sheriff's office in Wichita, Kansas, announces for its part that several unidentified objects were observed last night over a span of hours, at an altitude ranging from 2,000 to 3,000 meters. Landed in a planted field. Marmande, France, August 2nd, AFP. A flying saucer was seen last night by a student near the city of Marmande, in southwestern France. According to the witness, it was an enormous luminous disk that landed in a planted field and then rose to move away at a breakneck speed. From all corners of the earth, alarming news about flying saucers arrives. In France, one of those cosmic ships landed, and from its interior came crew members of medium height, according to an eyewitness. The authorities found traces of an unknown ship at the site. In Argentina, another ship landed on a mountain of difficult access. A peasant informed the authorities they were able to contemplate the ship but failed to reach it due to the ruggedness of the terrain. Over a control tower for cosmic rockets in Australia, a cosmic ship flew at the moment in which the experts of said tower were following the trajectory of the rocket that photographed Mars. The naked truth regarding the matter of flying saucers is that they really exist and that they have been registered by radar and duly photographed. It is impossible for radar and photographic devices to suffer hallucinations. This matter of the flying saucers is already scandalous, and although the scoundrels and the skeptics make mockery and scorn of those of us who affirm the existence of cosmic ships, whether they like it or not, flying saucers are a concrete fact, duly registered by radar. We are absolutely sure that the scoundrels do not like this thorny subject, due to that which is called self-love, amor proprio. Nobody likes to have their self-love wounded. They love themselves too much and are not willing to renounce their cherished theories just because. The scoundrels believe that human beings exist only on Earth. Their presumption is great in firmly believing that only they have the right to live in such a marvelous and infinite cosmos. Yet, they are like that, and there is no way to convince them that they are wrong. In the face of concrete facts, in the face of sensational news about flying saucers, the Gnostic movement stands up to demand that men of science speak with more frankness and that they do not continue with the purpose of hiding the truth about flying saucers or cosmic ships. In a South American country whose name we cannot mention, there exists a scientific society composed of 98 wise disciples of Marconi. These sages live together with a group of Martians who normally land in that region. What bothers the scoundrels most is that the matter is not made public and that everything is done so secretly. We ask these scoundrels if they are so unconscious as to give a dynamite bomb to a 3-year-old child. What would happen to a child playing with a dynamite bomb? If flying saucers were given to humanity, we can be absolutely sure that said saucers would be used for war, and then no one on the face of the earth could be sure of their own life. Let us remember the speed these ships develop, the power to rise or descend vertically, the power to remain apparently still in the air, etc., etc. Giving these ships to humanity would be like giving a dynamite bomb to a child to play with. To the gentlemen scoundrels who are so displeased by the secrecy, we advise 3 things. First, regenerate. Second, a good dose of patience. Third, abandon the mistaken concept of considering themselves the only inhabitants of the cosmos. The rocket that photographed Mars is not a marvel of science. It is impossible for the poor quality photographs taken from 17,000 kilometers away to report whether or not life exists on Mars. It is stupid to deduce the vital reality of the planet Mars from a poor quality photograph. The innumerable craters of Mars do not mean that it is a dead world like the Moon. If the Earth were photographed from a distance of 17,000 kilometers, it is logical that the photograph would be similar to those obtained of Mars. We would then see in those photographs something misty, full of innumerable craters. No photograph of a cosmic type can inform us of the oxygen that may or may not be on a given planet. Even though the gentlemen scoundrels feel very annoyed and launch all their defamatory drool against us, the reality is that in different places on Earth, select groups of people already exist who are in direct contact with the inhabitants of Mars, Mercury, Venus, etc. Chapter 2: A Jupiterian Visitor. The news coming from all parts of the world ensures that cosmic ships land in different places on the Earth. What bothers the scoundrels most is not being able to capture one of those ships, crew and all. We are absolutely sure that the cannibals of Africa and the Amazon also feel very annoyed when they fail to capture an explorer. In the specific case of flying saucers, people want to proceed like cannibals, but the crews of the cosmic ships, knowing human savagery, are clearly not willing to let themselves be caught because they know very well the fate that awaits them. The scoundrels would make them prisoners, the ships would be confiscated and used for war, etc., etc., etc. The crews of those cosmic ships are not willing to serve as guinea pigs, and rather than let themselves be caught, they prefer with good reason to disappear into infinite space. This is similar to the white explorer who flees before a tribe of cannibals. We are saying something that may wound the scoundrels too much because they love themselves too much and presume to be super civilized, even though deep down they are truly savages dressed in modern clothes. In Brazil, near Parana, a cosmic ship landed in the presence of a famous scientist named Kraspedon. The captain of said ship invited the aforementioned scientist to visit his ship. The sighted scientist was able to know not only the interior of the ship but also its crew. The captain of said ship said he came from a satellite of the planet Jupiter. He spoke in perfect Spanish and promised the sighted scientist he would return his visit. When Mr. Kraspedon wanted to give the captain his home address, it was not necessary because the captain declined the offer, saying, "We know perfectly well how to find you on Earth." 6 months later, on a random Sunday, Mr. Kraspedon, closed in his study at home, was suddenly interrupted by his wife, who informed him that a man was at the door wishing to speak with him. She told him that the man held a Bible in his hands and insisted on giving explanations about it. Mr. Kraspedon ordered his wife to dismiss the visitor and close the door. Moments later the lady returned, informing her husband that the aforementioned visitor did not want to leave and insisted on speaking with him. A bit ill-tempered, the sighted scientist resolved to leave his study and go to the door to attend to the visitor. Great was his surprise to find himself face to face with the captain of the cosmic ship he had met 6 months prior. Mr. Kraspedon invited the visitor in, showing him into the living room of his house. Then came the talk. The sighted scientist wanted to examine the Jupiterian's intellectual capacities and led him into a very difficult corner with highly complicated questions about the Bible. That visitor proved to possess a most brilliant intelligence, for he knew even the most intimate roots of Greek, Hebrew, and Aramaic, and knew how to give the sacred scriptures highly scientific, profoundly philosophical, extraordinarily artistic, and transcendently mystical interpretations. After that interview, there were 2 more interviews in different parts of the city, which the sighted scientist attended accompanied by a professor of physics and mathematics. The teachings the Jupiterian gave in the matter of astronomy were truly formidable. All that knowledge is transcendental. Mr. Kraspedon is a serious scientist, he is no charlatan. He resolved to condense all the knowledge the Jupiterian delivered to him into a precious book written in Portuguese titled My Contact with Flying Discs, Meu Contato com os Discos Voadores. The Jupiterian warned that atomic explosions are altering the upper layer of the Earth's atmosphere. This layer is the supreme filter that decomposes and analyzes solar rays, transforming them into light and heat. The Jupiterian said that if atomic scientists continued with their nuclear explosions, the day would come when the supreme filter would be incapable of analyzing and decomposing solar rays into light and heat. Then we would see the sun black as sackcloth and the moon red as blood, and upon the face of the earth, a ferruginous red color. The Jupiterian warned that as the upper layer of the Earth's atmosphere, which serves as the support for life on Earth, decomposes, great earthquakes would come and cities would fall like houses of cards, turned to dust. The Jupiterian reported that they, the navigators of space who visit Earth, are already seeing the upper layer of the Earth's atmosphere in a frank process of alteration, and without the brilliance and splendor of other times. The Jupiterian said that thermonuclear war will saturate the water we drink, the crops that sustain us, the clouds that bring rain, etc., with atomic radiation. The Jupiterian warned that atomic radiation will damage the phosphorus in the human brain, and everywhere dantesque scenes will be seen in the streets, hospitals full of people, the multiplication of cancer and leukemia, millions and millions of deaths, hunger, and despair. Times are passing, atomic explosions continue now in subterranean form, both in Russia and in the USA. France and China continue carrying out atomic explosions in the atmosphere, and the newspapers of the entire world bring news of spontaneous earthquakes in Chile, in San Salvador, now in Iraq, Japan, etc. We are facing concrete facts that cannot be refuted. The envious will be greatly bothered by the cited story regarding the Jupiterian and Mr. Kraspedon, and it would not surprise us much if they now launch against us all their satires based on a stupid skepticism, like that of those who mocked Pasteur, Galileo, Edison, etc. What bothers the envious most is not having the opportunity that Mr. Kraspedon had. We are sure they are cannibals, and that if these envious ones were given such an opportunity, they would inevitably abuse it, capturing or killing the visitors from the infinite cosmos. The cannibals are cannibals, and the inhabitants of other worlds know very well how to protect themselves from them, disappearing into space before the barbarian hordes can capture them. Chapter 3: The Man Who Went to Venus. We personally know Salvador Villanueva Medina, the man who went to Venus. Salvador is neither fantastic nor unbalanced. Salvador has been examined by psychiatrists, and they have reached the conclusion that he is a normal, mentally balanced man. Salvador does not live off his extraordinary adventure, nor from the book he wrote titled I Was on the Planet Venus, Yo estuve en el planeta Venus. This gentleman is now a mechanic by profession, he repairs automobiles, that is how he makes his living. We ourselves have been in his workshop seeing him work, he is 100% practical. We reserve this gentleman's home address as we do not have authorization to give it in print. We limit ourselves to only 2 things: first, to give testimony that this is an absolutely sane man dedicated to his work and his family. Second, that this man went through a formidable adventure but does not live off it. Salvador Villanueva Medina tells what happened, and this has cost him much suffering because the scoundrels, the usual skeptics, the imbeciles, have made a mockery of him. Salvador was on Venus beyond all doubt and fulfills the duty of informing his fellow men, even though they mock him. He who laughs at what he does not know is on the path to becoming an idiot. In the second decade of the month of August 1953, Salvador, driving a car toward Laredo in which he was taking some gringos who wished to return to their country, had to go through the most tremendous mishaps. The car broke down. His companions decided to return to a nearby town in search of a tow truck. Meanwhile, in the silence of the night, Salvador got under the car with the purpose of fixing it. When he tried to come out from under the automobile, he heard someone approaching, as footsteps were heard on the highway. A strange voice asked him in perfect Spanish, "What is wrong with the car?" Salvador did not answer. He found himself facing a strangely dressed man of small stature, approximately 1 meter and 20 centimeters. The strange uniform of the visitor, the face as white as ivory, the long platinum and wavy hair falling over his shoulders, the perfection of his face, etc., surprised Salvador tremendously. Salvador relates that this strange visitor wore a belt with perforations from which strange lights emerged. Salvador limited himself to asking the mysterious character if he was an aviator. The character replied that his plane, as we call it, was a short distance away. Having said these words, the character disappeared into the mountain. Salvador relates that after this event, he resolved to sleep peacefully in his car. Not much time had passed when he was awakened by loud knocks on the glass of the front door on the right side. Salvador opened his door, and great was his surprise to find his acquaintance, who now came in the company of another similar individual. Salvador let them into his car and talked with them extensively. Those characters said they came from Venus and gave many facts about that planet. They said that on Venus, the streets extended without end, all full of overpasses to avoid accidents. On Venus, vehicles do not consume fuels, neither vegetable nor mineral, as they are harmful to organisms. The Venusians use solar energy to propel their vehicles. They told him that the sidewalks, platforms, or footpaths of the streets are not still, as they are organized in the form of metallic bands that move and save effort for pedestrians, and that people never occupy the roadway of the street because it is metallic and a conductor of the solar force with which all vehicles are propelled. The Venusians said that in their world, they had only one sea, but that it was 3 times deeper than ours. Salvador asserted that, according to our terrestrial sages, no other planet can have rational inhabitants. The Venusians replied, "What makes them think such a thing? Is it perhaps the deficient means they have at their disposal to perform their calculations? Does it not seem too much of a pretension to believe that they are the only beings that populate the universe?" Those Venusians informed Salvador extensively about life on Venus. They dissipated his doubts by explaining to him that they had been raised on Venus through special scientific systems, a uniform and benign artificial climate, thus converting their world into a delicious dwelling. They explained that on Venus, children do not wander the streets, that the government controls them until they reach the appropriate age, that they are classified according to their physical and mental qualities and are assigned to specific places where they are needed. These Venusians explained that they extract from the sea all the elements necessary to construct buildings, make clothing, manufacture vehicles, and 60% or more of their food. They said that their ships can just as easily be in the air as in the water, and that on the bottom of the sea, there exist gigantic factories tasked with scientifically selecting and utilizing fish for their sustenance. The Venusians affirmed that here on our planet Earth, some of them stay dressed as civilians with the purpose of studying the humanity of our planet. They say that the historical stage through which we terrestrials are passing now was lived by them many thousands of years ago. They also knew wars and astute political leaders until, at last, fraternity was born. Today, they have no flags. They have made their world a single homeland and are governed by sages who only limit themselves to advising them with wisdom and love. Salvador was invited by the Venusians to verify the reality of these affirmations. He left the car following the 2 men. He went with them into the mountain and found a majestic ship in the shape of a flattened sphere that rested on 3 buoys forming a triangle. Salvador says that said ship had, on the upper part, a cable slightly inclined inward, about 1 meter in height, surrounded by holes that resembled portholes like those used on ships. Salvador entered after his companions into the interior of the formidable cosmic ship which, according to Salvador's words, looked like an impressive fortress. For 5 days, Salvador lived on the planet Venus, and he returned to Earth after having verified the reality of all these affirmations made by the Venusians. Venusian civilization is millions of times more advanced than that of us, the proud terrestrials. Salvador relates what he saw. We limit ourselves to commenting on it. The Phillips House examined samples of soil and plants collected at the site where Salvador found the ship, and a very strange atomic disorder was discovered in those samples. The site was also photographed, as the tracks of the ship remained there. The sage Adamski gave a lecture on this topic at the Insurgents Theater in Mexico. A German commission of scientists took an interest in the matter, visited Salvador, and studied the scene of the events. No doubt has remained, however, the imbeciles will continue to laugh as always because they are imbeciles. Chapter 4: Flying Saucers and Little Green Men. Under the car with the purpose of fixing it. When he tried to come out from under the automobile, he heard someone approaching, as footsteps were heard on the highway. A strange voice asked him in perfect Spanish, "What is wrong with the car?" Salvador did not answer. He found himself facing a strangely dressed man of small stature, approximately 1 meter and 20 centimeters. The strange uniform of the visitor, the face as white as ivory, the long platinum and wavy hair falling over his shoulders, the perfection of his face, etc., surprised Salvador tremendously. Salvador relates that this strange visitor wore a belt with perforations from which strange lights emerged. Salvador limited himself to asking the mysterious character if he was an aviator. The character replied that his plane, as we call it, was a short distance away. Having said these words, the character disappeared into the mountain. Salvador relates that after this event, he resolved to sleep peacefully in his car. Not much time had passed when he was awakened by loud knocks on the glass of the front door on the right side. Salvador opened his door and great was his surprise to find his acquaintance, who now came in the company of another similar individual. Salvador let them into his car and talked with them extensively. Those characters said they came from Venus and gave many facts about that planet. They said that on Venus, the streets extended without end, all full of overpasses to avoid accidents. On Venus, vehicles do not consume fuels, neither vegetable nor mineral, as they are harmful to organisms. The Venusians use solar energy to propel their vehicles. They told him that the sidewalks, platforms, or footpaths of the streets are not still, as they are organized in the form of metallic bands that move and save effort for pedestrians, and that people never occupy the roadway of the street because it is metallic and a conductor of the solar force with which all vehicles are propelled. The Venusians said that in their world, they had only one sea, but that it was 3 times deeper than ours. Salvador asserted that, according to our terrestrial sages, no other planet can have rational inhabitants. The Venusians replied, "What makes them think such a thing? Is it perhaps the deficient means they have at their disposal to perform their calculations? Does it not seem too much of a pretension to believe that they are the only beings that populate the universe?" Those Venusians informed Salvador extensively about life on Venus. They dissipated his doubts by explaining to him that they had been raised on Venus through special scientific systems, a uniform and benign artificial climate, thus converting their world into a delicious dwelling. They explained that on Venus, children do not wander the streets, that the government controls them until they reach the appropriate age, that they are classified according to their physical and mental qualities and are assigned to specific places where they are needed. These Venusians explained that they extract from the sea all the elements necessary to construct buildings, make clothing, manufacture vehicles, and 60% or more of their food. They said that their ships can just as easily be in the air as in the water, and that on the bottom of the sea, there exist gigantic factories tasked with scientifically selecting and utilizing fish for their sustenance. The Venusians affirmed that here on our planet Earth, some of them stay dressed as civilians with the purpose of studying the humanity of our planet. They say that the historical stage through which we terrestrials are passing now was lived by them many thousands of years ago. They also knew wars and astute political leaders until, at last, fraternity was born. Today, they have no flags. They have made their world a single homeland and are governed by sages who only limit themselves to advising them with wisdom and love. Salvador was invited by the Venusians to verify the reality of these affirmations. He left the car following the two men. He went with them into the mountain and found a majestic ship in the shape of a flattened sphere that rested on three buoys forming a triangle. Salvador says that said ship had, on the upper part, a cable slightly inclined inward, about 1 meter in height, surrounded by holes that resembled portholes like those used on ships. Salvador entered after his companions into the interior of the formidable cosmic ship which, according to Salvador's words, looked like an impressive fortress. For 5 days, Salvador lived on the planet Venus, and he returned to Earth after having verified the reality of all these affirmations made by the Venusians. Venusian civilization is millions of times more advanced than that of us, the proud terrestrials. Salvador relates what he saw. We limit ourselves to commenting on it. The Phillips House examined samples of soil and plants collected at the site where Salvador found the ship, and a very strange atomic disorder was discovered in those samples. The site was also photographed, as the tracks of the ship remained there. The sage Adamski gave a lecture on this topic at the Insurgents Theater in Mexico. A German commission of scientists took an interest in the matter, visited Salvador, and studied the scene of the events. No doubt has remained, however, the imbeciles will continue to laugh as always because they are imbeciles. Chapter 4: Flying Saucers and Little Green Men. From Lima, Peru, news arrived dated August 2nd with the following text: a flying saucer with its crew, a greenish-colored dwarf, was seen last night on the rooftop of a house in this capital by a young student, according to a statement he gave today to the newspaper El Comercio. This visit is added to one reported last week by a guard in the Chosica district, 40 kilometers from Lima, who reported having seen in the courtyard of a factory a saucer equipped with a trunk like an elephant's, which disappeared after 10 minutes of observation. As for last night's flying saucer, Alberto San Roman Núñez, 15 years old, claimed to have seen a greenish, wrinkled being, 90 centimeters tall, gliding across the rooftop. Shortly after, the ship emitted a reddish light in the midst of which it took flight, leaving its tracks on the floor in which for landing bases can be seen. So far, this wonderful news. Green-colored skin may surprise many people, but we Earthlings also have black, yellow, and red-skinned races that could surprise cosmic visitors. Truly, none of the eyewitnesses of flying saucers and extraterrestrial crews could dare to assert that these mysterious visitors have shapes different from those of us poor Earthlings. It is regrettable that science fiction has dedicated itself to spreading false ideas or fantasies about the figure and form of extraterrestrial visitors. It is clear that skin color varies according to climates, environments, etc., but the human form, whether gigantic, medium, or small, is always the same. Science fiction has taken it upon itself to spread tremendous falsehoods everywhere, through radio, cinema, or television, which are harmful to humanity. Infamous slanders have been raised against extraterrestrial visitors. The minds of Earthlings judge according to their own perversities and want to see in our noble visitors all the hatred of the Earthling mind, all the atrocities of a Hitler, all the monstrosities of the inventor of the H-bomb, all the bloody purges of a Stalin, etc. These perverse Earthlings do not want to realize the noble purpose of our extraterrestrial friends. If they wanted to take over planet Earth and enslave all its inhabitants, they would do it in minutes because they have sufficient elements to do so. If they wanted to destroy us, they would have already done so because they have atomic and scientific instruments with which they can blow any planet in space to pieces. Let us remember that long before we Earthlings knew mathematics, they were already navigating sidereal space. Our extraterrestrial friends know planet Earth better than we do and have no interest in enslaving or destroying us, as has been mysteriously spread by the science fiction of these times of rock and rebels without a cause. Our extraterrestrial friends know the critical hour we are living in and only want to help us. We urgently need their help because we Earthlings are a total failure. If the barbarian hordes continue in their stupid purpose of capturing or destroying the cosmic ships that visit us, we will lamentably lose the brilliant opportunity that our brothers from space are offering us. They want to establish personal contact with us, but instead of receiving them with true respect and love, instead of offering them hospitality, fighter planes are sent to intercept them. Everyone wants to destroy them. Truly we are behaving like savages, alien to all civilization and all culture. The hour has arrived to change our bellicose attitude and offer our visiting brothers from space our friendship and affection. They come to help us, not to destroy us. Gnostic brothers must begin by setting the example, establishing friendly signals on the rooftops of our houses, in our country, and on our land, circles with dots in the center. From the dot, lines emerge that go toward the periphery, and from the periphery, small lines emerge that, although they do not reach the center, suggest they are headed toward the center, toward the dot. Make the aforementioned dot in the center of the circle a beautiful golden color to symbolize divinity. The lines that go from the periphery toward the center, toward the dot, can be many and short, and blue in color. The lines that go from the center toward the circle clearly connect the dot with the circumference and can also be blue. This is the symbol of divinity in the Martian religion. We can use it by placing it on our houses, on our land, making it with light bulbs or simply painted, to establish a friendly relationship with the inhabitants of Mars and with all the inhabitants of the cosmos. This symbol means that everything comes from divinity and returns to divinity. Use this symbol to offer friendship to the inhabitants of space, even if the rascals laugh at us. You all already know what rascals are. They are 100% skeptical, they boast of being super civilized, they believe they are very wise, and they use satire and fine irony against all of us who do not want to think like them. Chapter 5, The Gnostic Movement, Complete Translation. Man has launched himself into the conquest of space without giving a damn about flying saucers or the spiritual question. Russians and gringos want to conquer the moon, and it is clear that they will land, although cosmic rockets are somewhat grotesque and even ridiculous when we compare them with flying saucers. The most lamentable thing about all this is the aggressive instinct of terrestrial humanity. Whoever takes the moon is going to want to convert it into an armed military platform with atomic potential. Trojans and Tyrians have not even taken the moon yet, and there is already talk of orbital atomic rockets to destroy defenseless cities. That is the state in which terrestrial humanity unfortunately finds itself. The inventor of the H-bomb still does not know the damage he caused to humanity. If one of those hydrogen bombs were to explode in the upper zones of the atmosphere where the deposit of pure hydrogen exists, the entire atmosphere of the Earth would burn, thus fulfilling the prophecy spoken by Peter in his second epistle, which literally says, "But the day of the Lord will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens shall pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat, and the earth and the works that are therein shall be burned." C. 10. Epistle 2. St. Peter. It is clear that before this could happen, before a madman thought of doing this experiment with a hydrogen bomb, before it could explode in the upper zones of the atmosphere where the Earth's pure hydrogen is, the living deposit of universal hydrogen, we can be sure that they, the navigators of infinite space, would blow planet Earth to pieces, because the humanities of the other planets of the solar system have no reason to suffer the consequences of the explosion of terrestrial hydrogen. Such a terrestrial catastrophe would resonate appallingly upon the other planets of the solar system, and before this happened, they, the navigators of sidereal space, would find themselves forced with profound pain to destroy this planet, blowing it to pieces, because it is not just that other planetary humanities suffer the consequences of the follies of terrestrial man. In these moments, the inhabitants of the Earth are filled with pride and arrogance. The perverse have raised the Tower of Babel with which they plan to conquer outer space, and already the inhabitants of the other worlds of the solar system have orders to defend themselves. Space rockets will inevitably reach the moon. Afterward, these perverse and arrogant terrestrials will want to launch themselves upon Mars. The encounter with the humanities of other planets is, by logical deduction, totally inevitable, and this decaying and degenerate race will have no choice but to transform or perish. The universal Christian Gnostic movement wants to forge groups of men and women of goodwill to welcome our brothers from space. Millions of human beings filled with arrogance, pride, and perversity only believe in their space rockets and their destructive weapons. Those hordes of know-it-alls are surrendered to all the vices of the earth and laugh at their leisure at everything that smells of flying saucers. The Gnostic people in no way accept the Antichrist of false science, much less can they believe that infinite space can be conquered without having conquered ourselves. It would be absurd to suppose that the barbarian hordes of the earth could conquer other worlds and enslave superior planetary humanities. The Gnostic people do not accept the perversity of the scoundrels and have resolved to organize the World Salvation Army with men and women of goodwill who are ready with joy to welcome our brothers from sidereal space. The universal Gnostic movement will establish everywhere, in different places on Earth, true mystical cenacles conducive to the study of cosmic laws, with the purpose of preparing people to receive our brothers from space. The Gnostic movement understands the necessity of cosmic ships to travel through the infinite, but does not believe that the path of perversity, pride, and rocketry is precisely the indicated one. The cosmos infinite is sacred and is governed by divine laws that cannot be broken with impunity without receiving disastrous consequences. We Gnostics are ready to study the laws of eternal space with all humility and at the feet of our brothers from space. We know that this is precisely the exact path that can allow us to navigate in true cosmic ships throughout all of infinite space. Now we need to prepare ourselves by ending all our defects, dissolving that ego, that we carry within, that harmful Mephistopheles. Since in some places of the earth, very secretly, there exist select human groups that are in contact with cosmic visitors, from whom they have received small quantities of interplanetary ships. In the Himalayas, filled with snow and cold, there exists a certain group of lamas who are in contact with our brothers from space. That group possesses, very secretly, a certain amount of flying saucers with which they travel through the infinite. In other places of the earth, there exist similar groups that already possess flying saucers. We are saying something that the know-it-all scoundrels, ironic, sarcastic, and full of petulance, cannot even remotely accept. However, what does that matter to science, and what does it matter to us? We, the brothers of the Gnostic movement, are going to prepare ourselves humbly to make ourselves worthy and deserving of receiving, in select and hidden groups, the brothers from space. This section serves as the call to action and logistical guide that originally appeared at the end of the 1955–1960s editions of Cosmic Ships. It highlights the transition from theory to physical organization. Addresses. If, after reading this booklet, the desire to go deeper into Gnostic studies has been born within you, we are pleased to provide below some addresses where they can guide you and lead you to the Gnostic study centers both in Colombia and abroad. Mexico, D.F. Rafael Ruiz O. Apartado Postal M7858. Mexico. Colombia, Cienega, Magdalena, Pedro Lopez Lindo. Apartado N. Degree 31. Note, the previously mentioned works can be obtained at any of these addresses.